Want to listen to this Ivory Tower Boiler Room episode ad free? Head on over to our Patreon, where you will get this episode and all of our episodes ad free. And you can see our video episode, including this one right now, where you'll see my beautiful face and the guest's beautiful face. Who doesn't love that? And I am so excited to announce that all of you can get a 1 week free trial on our Patreon. Join the ITBR professor level and you unlock all of Mary's True Crime and Academia Patreon episodes, our rewatch show, including Queer as Folk and Smash. You can even listen to us dissect Scream and The Exorcist. And I heard, rumor has it, that we have an upcoming Britney Spears episode, a Fall of the House of Usher episode, and yes, even a Saltburn episode, which is going to be quite riveting. So head to patreon.com/Ivory Tower Boiler Room, join the 1 week free trial, and see what you're missing out on. And while you're at it, please follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Ivory Tower Boiler Room. Rate, follow, and subscribe to us on Apple and Spotify podcasts. Thanks so much, and I hope that you enjoy all of our Ivory Tower Boiler Room episodes.
This episode is brought to you by Snapple. Welcome to the Snapple Market Auditory Experience. Close your eyes. Imagine you're walking into your neighborhood store. You make your way to the back and reach for your favorite Snapple flavor. You can't wait. You take a sip. Whoa, that's a lot of flavor. What flavor are you holding? Now open your eyes and check out Snapple.com to find ridiculously flavorful Snapple near you.
Hey, true crime friends. Welcome back to another episode of True Crime in Academia. I am your host, Mary DiPipi. I hope you all had a wonderful week this week. Mine was so extremely hectic and chaotic in like the best way. We had like this huge meeting at work that my department basically coordinated everything, like all the fun activities we had, like team building activities, but then also night activities. So I was pulling some very long days, so I am exhausted. So for that reason, we are refeaturing my interview with Revealing the Ivory Tower's Dr. Mack. For those of you who may not remember, she is a psychologist who unfortunately suffered abuse at the hands of one of her professors. So she talks about that as well as the world of academia and how it really can affect, someone's mental health. So we're going to take a quick break and then we're going to get right into it.
Hi, this is Dr. Andrew Rimby, and I'm really excited to talk to you all about one of our ITBR sponsors, Broadview Press. Broadview Press is an independent academic publisher in the humanities that produces high-quality, pedagogically useful books for use in university and college classrooms. They publish mainly in English studies, writing, philosophy, and history. They are always publishing with an eye towards diversity, building a strong list of titles from women, people of color, and authors from other marginalized groups. If you haven't heard my Broadview Press interviews, you need to. Recently, I just had on Dr. Shannon Day, who talked about her book, Beyond the Binary, Thinking About Sex and Gender. And in the summer, I had on Dr. Jason Holt, who gave us all a comprehensive history of what it means to be a philosopher who studies sporting culture. And of course, we went back to ancient Greek, literature, mythology, history to look at the roots of athleticism. And Last year, I had on Dr. Jeffrey Andrew Weinstock, who's actually going to be coming on the podcast soon to give his thoughts on the new Fall of the House of Usher Netflix series. He talked all about pop culture for beginners. And Broadview Press is offering an exclusive discount because of our sponsorship. So head to broadviewpress.com where you're going to see such a wide range of literature. Use the code Ivory Tower, IVORYTOWER for 20% off site-wide all of their books. Again, it's broadviewpress.com. Enjoy your reading. I am here in Port Jefferson, New York, on Long Island, in one of my favorite stores. It is the Soapbox NY, a bath and body boutique. I'm here with one of the co-owners, Janine. Hi, Janine.
Hi, Andrew. How are you? Thank you.
Good. So I know you have many winter scents to walk us through. So let's
Yes.
get started.
This is from company Michelle Design Works, another one of our favorites. Room spray that you can use any room in your house, just kind of freshens up the room a bit.
Then what is this by Michelle Design
Also by
Works?
Michelle Design Works is Winter Blooms, one of their new scents this holiday season. It's great. It's a hand wash. You can use it in your kitchen or your bathroom.
And then here's something to follow it up with.
Exactly. It's a hand and body lotion.
And then what is this beautiful decorative candle here?
One of our favorites that we actually sell
Mhm.
all year round because it's so popular. This is the scent of Fraser Fir by Times.
I think I'm becoming addicted to it.
Yes, I think you are because you already own one, I believe.
I own one, and it is a decorative candle for me because I'm about to open it, but it's just in such
I know the
a
packaging
beautiful
is, I don't know what's better,
package.
the packaging or the scent,
I'm
but
using
it's
it as a
wonderful.
holiday decoration. So
Cool.
I'll get to the candle eventually,
Yes, you
everyone.
will. But it's wonderful because with Times and their Fraser Fir, not only do they carry the candles, but they also make it in the scents in the diffuser, in soap, the hand lotion, the hand soap. It's just a great line and a great scent.
So, Janine, how can everyone out there get their hands on your hand and body and even pajama products?
Well, we'd be more than happy to see you in our shop. We're located at 18 Chandler Square in Port Jefferson Village. You could always call us to place an order. We're happy to ship to you. Our phone number is 631-509-1424. You can place an order on our website, soapboxny.com. And you could also find us on Instagram or TikTok at the Soapbox NY.
So many options.
Mhm.
I can't wait for all of you out there to just enjoy what I love so much about the Soapbox NY. So, with that,
Thank you so much.
happy winter, everyone. Hi, this is Dr. Andrew Rimby. And when I'm not here on the podcast, I am consulting with small businesses, undergraduate students, graduate students, podcasters, and those in media. So, if you're curious about the work that I've done with my consultation services, you could just type me in on Google, Ivory Tower Boiler Room, and you'll see a few reviews pop up. I've worked on college admission essays for undergraduate students. I've revamped and expanded a small business's social media marketing campaign right here in Port Jefferson, New York. And I've also worked on a graduate student's thesis for her physician assistant program. So if you want to seek me out or inquire about my consultation services, just email me. That's the easiest way to reach me at ivorytowerboilerroom@gmail.com. That's easy to remember. And 'tis the season for college admission essays, both undergraduate and graduate, thesis writing, dissertation writing. Do you want to create a podcast and you don't know where to begin? Media work, how to open a TikTok, how to start creating videos on TikTok, what to do with your Instagram. All of that I have done. So just reach out to me.
Hey, true crime friends. With me, as always, is a very special guest. I am particularly very excited about this guest. I have creeped on her Instagram for so long now, and I love everything she puts out. She is a literal PhD in psychology. She is a mental health influencer. And I mean, for some of you who saw my post and was like, what is the connection?
we have very similar names here. So at the Ivory Tower Boiler Room, please help me welcome the incredible Dr. Mack of the podcast, revealing the Ivory Tower. Welcome, Dr. Mack. Thank you so much for being here.
I can't follow that intro. I got so hyped up from this. What do I do with my hands? Thank you for having me.
I am, like I said, I am so excited that you are here. We talked about this earlier. A lot of true crime interest and just a lot of the true crime world really revolves around the psychology of the people who commit these crimes. So to have an actual like PhD clinical psychologist here to talk with is just insane, and I love it.
I'm ready.
So my first question, I mean, I normally ask if how people got interested in true crime, but I want to know how you got interested in psychology and what kind of made you decide like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do with my life.
Sure. So obviously the mental health aspect, what I do now is one spot under the big umbrella of psychology. And so that's what I was interested in the therapy aspect first. So in 2005, on August 29th, the day after my 15th birthday, we got hit with Hurricane Katrina. And where I'm from, it was near New Orleans. And so we got a direct hit. And obviously, unfortunately, we're now used to bigger storms happening more frequently. But at that time, it was unusual and we didn't have the tech advancements that we have now. So kind of witnessing not just things that I was experiencing personally after the fact, but also collective trauma, these weird shared experiences of trauma and grief that we have in common. And then also everyone has their own unique experiences that they're going through, and going through therapy myself during that time, watching a lot of people going through that or struggling. And so I knew I wanted to do therapy. Quickly decided in high school and then early in my undergrad program that I wanted to pursue the doctoral route. So there's also a PsyD for people that don't know that. I have a PhD, but there's also a doctorate of psychology. And so that's much more focused on the clinical aspect and also tends to be more expensive. And so if that's your journey, go for it. I went the PhD route because it's incredibly versatile. You can do so many different things with it. There are a lot of things obviously I'm not competent to do, but you can make a career pretty much doing whatever you want to do. And I get bored very easily. So that's essentially what led me to this point. And I've also, speaking of true crime things, my intro to the field actually was as a baby master student doing practicum in Pensacola, Florida, in their jail, which is an interesting jail. And that's actually the jail that Ted Bundy was first brought into before he was transferred. And it is a jail that has many challenges. It's not privately owned. It is actually owned by the county. So a lot of respect there. Also means they don't have a lot of money that they need. So that was my first experience. So all the rose-colored glasses were taken off. Met all kinds of people there. I've worked in a lot of different settings. I'm now in private practice, but I do also have that experience of working with people that have committed crimes or are accused of committing crimes.
Which to me is so awesome. I mean, I don't think I've expressed this. Well, I've expressed some of this to listeners. I did do some psychology courses in my undergrad. Like at one point, actually, my original undergrad started out as a dance major. And thank you. It's a very competitive field for those who are in it. They know. And I realized that there were certain aspects of my life that I wanted to have, that this life wasn't going to make that easy for me. So I stepped away from that. And at one point I really wanted to do dance therapy because I was like, oh, let me just marry my love of dance with my love of psychology that I had always had and bring them together. Of course, that didn't pan out. It was a whole thing. I am where I'm supposed to be. I truly feel that. But that was always one of the things for me, was that like I really wanted to delve into the psychology, because again, for the therapy aspect of it, not necessarily my interest in true crime. Of course, that kind of helped my interest in it, but
Sure.
you know, the therapeutic aspect of everything really drove me to that. Now, aside from me, because that's not why we're here about you. So what aspect of psychology that you specifically practice that you enjoyed the most, would you say?
Again, I like the versatility. I can wear many hats. I do therapy. I also do a lot of consultation. I provide trainings to people in all kinds of settings. I run the social media account for the group practice that I'm in and help with marketing a little bit in our field, in the sense of providing education, not gross grifty marketing, but really how do we get accurate information out there in a way that's compelling and interesting for people, because we have to compete against things that are really interesting but not super accurate. So I get to wear all kinds of hats and I love that. But we're talking about therapy work. I tend to specialize more in the complex cases. Like when we don't know what's going on, I'm usually the person that people call, or if they're feeling stuck and they're wanting to kind of explore a little bit more, because I've dabbled. So corrections, a lot of different kinds of medical settings with different age groups. I have also worked with college students, community mental health, now private practice. And so a little bit of everything. And I tend to view things with a skeptical lens. And so trying to make sure we're not missing anything is the big piece here. So that tends to be a big one. I also now work with a lot of queer clients, non-monogamy clients, people that have chronic pain, characterological problems, or probably what most people would refer to as quote personality disorders, things like that.
That's awesome and so fascinating. Like, I just love hearing you talk about that. Now, you have mentioned in your social media and in your podcast that you have also been a victim of crimes within academia, which, of course, as all my listeners know, that's what they're here for. So,
right.
The fact that you were so comfortable and willing to talk about it, because I mean, I'm never going to be like, oh yeah, I know that about you because of social media, so let's just talk about it. No big deal. But you were just so willing and so open to talk about it. And I was so glad that you were so open to talk about it. So can you kind of just give us an idea of like just what happened, what was the situation, and what was the outcome?
Yes. So answering this question is challenging, not because I'm unwilling to talk about it. I think it needs to be talked about, but just because it's really hard to do the long story short version of this, because there was the depth of abuse, the aspects that were kind of the headline grabby stuff, which I'll get into. There's also the breadth of it. And so even the pin post, for example, that I have on my Instagram, that's a small fragment of actually what happened. And it was a huge cultural component. And also being in my field, there are added layers here as well. So for context, I had gotten a full master's program, like I referred to, and it was an amazing program. Learned a lot. All my professors were amazing, had appropriate boundaries. Then I interviewed for PhD programs because I knew that was my end goal. If you stop at a master's level, you're a therapist, you're not a psychologist, at least in this particular field of psychology. And so I interviewed. On paper, this PhD program was amazing. They had a strong social justice lens and they said all the right things. Their writing was really compelling. They said we use postmodern approaches like intersectional feminism. We really rally and advocate against oppressive systems. And so I'm excited. And they were very excited to have me. They quickly changed their minds about that. I get there and immediately you feel bamboozled and betrayed, because it's not just that this is your average program that's doing cognitive behavioral therapy on kids and that's what they focus on. It's this particular thing, and they're actively engaging in it in a lot of different ways. You come in and there's this culture right out of the gate of these really warped boundaries are normal. There's a lot of grooming that happens. And for a lot of the PhD students, we had a reference point. You know, when you're a grad student, you do interact with your faculty a little more, so it's hard to know. There was also a master's program, and we had students that were they came in with a bachelor's degree and earned their master's along the way to their PhD as well. So they didn't have that reference point. And so they're cultivating these boundaries of, for example, it's normal to talk to your faculty or even your advisor about horrific trauma that you went through so that we can weaponize against weaponize it against you later. It's normal for your faculty to add you on social media on all platforms so they can message you at 1 a.m. on a Saturday night. It's normal for you guys to go out drinking together. It's normal for students to live with faculty. You're constantly getting, yes, that did happen. Not the living together only happened a couple times, but that happened. And I had gotten warnings very quickly from students that were in the program of my temporary advisor. You're assigned an advisor when you get in, and you could decide if you keep them and they're on your dissertation committee and in charge of everything, basically, as with other graduate programs. And we have another added layer of power because not only do we do a dissertation in my field of psychology, we also have that clinical aspect we have to complete. It's a really unique niche thing in clinical counseling and school psych. So we also have clinical supervisors that are our faculty. And of course, they're teaching our courses. So we have to interact with them quite a bit. He immediately started grooming. Immediately engaged in grooming behavior. It was very subtle and sophisticated. And I picked up on it because, again, we're in this unusual spot where this is a psychology program, a program that's psychology and mental health. And I worked in corrections. I trust my judgment, and I immediately know what's going on. So there were very subtle things that to start out with. For those of you that don't know, the technical term of grooming is essentially this insidious predatory behavior that escalates over time, but the initial goal is to build that trust. So there's no outright neon red flags. For the perfect reference is that Netflix documentary Abducted in Plain Sight. That is the epitome, or anything related to R. Kelly, for example, that is grooming. So that also happens to adults. And so there were subtle things like trying to text me outside of class to see if I would respond, trying to inappropriately disclose his own trauma so then I feel compelled then and uncomfortable and I need to reciprocate that. And kind of giving this fake sense of I get to feel empowered as a student by saying, oh, you can choose to leave the door open when we meet or not. It's totally up to you. And then you feel compelled to say, no, I trust you. I'll close the door. So those kinds of things. And then it builds over time. And ultimately, your advisor has control over everything that you do. And it's not like you can switch to another program. This isn't a bachelor's degree. You lose not only your PhD credits, but almost all of your master's credits. And on top of that, you have to explain why you're leaving that program, and you have to have letters of recommendation. And for a lot of people, that might be a big source of their income or kind of a way to build that generational wealth that maybe they don't have. So there's that privilege that most people don't have. So all that to say, that was escalating. We also had other faculty that were horrifically abusive in all kinds of ways, making overtly racist comments, transphobic, homophobic comments. The people, it's almost hilariously ironic, the people that were advocating and researching resilience in trans people, for example, couldn't even use the correct pronouns for the students in the program. So that kind of thing. Also a lot of retaliation, very emotionally reactive. And again, they have a lot of power. And so my cohort specifically, there was a faculty shortage. So we had exposure to the worst faculty. And so the rose-colored glasses were removed very quickly. There were also a lot of HR violations and that type of abuse. So you had to do work after your assistantship was up with that faculty member. they didn't give you enough work when your time was with them. And so they'd come back later and try to retroactively get that work from you, or they demand that you house sit for them without paying you, trying to force you to make sure and students that they get good ratings at the end of the semester, and all kinds of stuff. So that's why it's tough, is there's the depth and also the breadth. So I switch advisors ultimately and had to find a way to do that. There was no way to do that in a way that was not going to make him upset, because he can't handle rejection and he never let go of that. Even though I used a legit argument, I needed someone with qualitative experience. He didn't have that. Never let that go. I made sure he was not on my dissertation committee. I made sure he was not a supervisor. I did have to take classes with him. And so what we didn't know is when I switched, that even though he has a type or a preference, that ultimately he would prey on anyone he could get access to. And he had a lot more power over the master students, seemingly strategically. Again, they don't know what a graduate program is supposed to be like. And it essentially escalated over time. The other faculty were also repeatedly retaliating. There was a lot of reactivity toward us, a lot of emotional instability, a lot of retaliation. And it got to a point in 2018, I had to take a multicultural class with him. And by this point, he had moved to assaulting students, multiple students by this point. And I had heard about it and I knew what was going on. And all of us had a tight leash on us. There were costs no matter what happened. Obviously, the cost for his advisees is that he's their advisor. For me, I've created a cocoon for myself. I still couldn't do a whole lot about it because it's not going to be taken out on me. They're scared of me. It's going to be taken out on my friends that are his advisees, and that he does have control. And that goes for all the faculty, because by this point, they were not very big fans of me. I was at this point a troublemaker. I was aggressive. I was abrasive because I was not having a lot of it, and generally gave off the vibe that I'm angry, because most people would be angry in this situation. So yeah, I took a multicultural class with him while he's very much lecturing about how much he's a feminist, and I know what he's doing. And I've been through some things in my life, and I have to say, trying to show some level of restraint, I was not perfect with that. In that class was really hard because I knew what he was doing, but I couldn't let him know that I knew what he was doing. So it ended up having to be very strategic. Part of the reason that I will tell this story in more depth on my podcast actually is because there are also misconceptions within my own program that I was actually the person that did all of it. And that's not fully what happened. I was the loudest voice. I was not the one that was actually doing a lot of the impactful work. So during that time, he started getting increasingly angry toward me and increasing paranoia, engaging in a lot of character assassination, telling students not to associate with me. He would punish them if they did. He tried getting me kicked out of the program, violated FERPA. For those of you that don't know, it's like confidentiality for faculty. So he violated FERPA to my advisor at the time, trying to corner her to kick me out of the program. And I actually confronted him about that and had students stay behind. Well, the problem is there's always easy deniability. And so that's what he would say. I don't know why he thought this would work, but he got really nervous, shuffled around papers, wouldn't make direct eye contact because he was scared of me. And he said, well, I don't know he's baiting me to try to out who told me that. So then he can retaliate, which obviously I'm not going to do. And unfortunately, one of the students that stayed back with me was one of his advisees. So he retaliated against her later, not in the same way as some others, still not great. And started increasingly becoming unraveled, super brazen by this point because he hadn't gotten in trouble. Complaints had been filed against him in the past. And by the time I entered my program, there's a lot of learned helplessness because they tried. And the more I learned, the more I got like a really big systemic understanding of what happened here. The other reason I want to tell the story is he got scapegoated. Absolutely. It was the most headline grabby piece. He was not the only person that was engaging in this. Again, it was like it was cultivated in this culture. So there was a conference in the fall of 2018. I think it was around the fall. I was not there, and he just did not care. Was very brazen, was escalating with multiple students. And a lot of the students at this point were reaching their breaking point and pulling back. They would try to push back a little bit, or even just maybe not respond as quickly to messages. So then for multiple faculty, including him, it's like, okay, well, if you don't answer a text message, I'm going to Facebook message you, or I'm going to Instagram DM you. I'm going to Snapchat message you, because he'd gotten smart and moved to Snapchat. He was very sophisticated in his approach. And of course, if those of you that don't know, if you screenshot something in Snapchat, it lets the sender know that you screenshot it, which is why it moved to that. So if you kept distancing yourself, what started happening is he would threaten to kill himself to the students to try to get them to reel them back in.
He tried to play like the abusive ex-boyfriend tactic of, oh, if you don't get back with me, I'm gonna kill myself.
Yeah. And not even that intimate. It's just, hey, they're not responding. I've tried to message them a few times, so it's more subtle than that. It's, I'm feeling really suicidal, I might kill myself. So then that way you're looped back in. And so at this point, I think he was probably stalking through like phone or internet mostly, but also in person a little bit, up to maybe 10 students and assaulting at least 2. And so a couple of us came up with a plan, and he was unraveling and already thought I was out to get him and was very paranoid about it. And so here's where I correct this for my program, that I essentially said, okay, and one of my friends said, I can't do this anymore. Like I have to find a way to not meet with him anymore in person. And I said, okay, what if we use that to our advantage? He already thinks I'm going to report him to Title IX. At the time, I didn't know what Title IX was. There's not enough education on that. There's research already showing
not
that,
at
right?
all.
So I bluffed, and I don't like bluffing. And so I said, just drop that. Say that I'm the one that's on edge and trying to find out what's going on and snooping. And of course, I know what's going on the whole time, but he doesn't know that I know still. None of the faculty think that I know, even though, of course, all the students are telling me everything.
Yeah.
So after he tries to get me kicked out of the program again, I still don't know to this day what he said. I know it's in the police report somewhere, but it got to a point where in Snapchat, it was around the fall. It was right before I proposed my dissertation. It was also when we were applying for internships, which is similar to medical residents and their matching program they have to go through. I had like 5 jobs, practica, that I was doing at the time. And my friend tells me that he had sent her a message through Snapchat. And he had made veiled threats before of violence. And I knew that the facade that I saw of him was not the real thing. It was crocodile tears that were very performative, or a lot of just grandiosity and really loving to hear himself talk, or faking like I'm really concerned about you. I did not know what the actual side of him was. And he showed that to a few students. And it's very violent. It's very scary. And the other way that he had control over them is they would witness how he would respond to other people and the threats that he would make to them about other people. So obviously they're thinking, oh my God, he's thinking about doing this to someone else. Obviously he's going to do that to me. He knows where I live. You know, he has total control, right? So he started saying that he had money set aside to take care of me, to handle this problem. And so my friend said, what are you talking about? And he said, I'm tired of this. I will find someone. I will hire someone for $10,000 to kill me, my partner, and my family. And so she's telling me this, like live texting it to me on Snapchat. And of course, again, remember, it's Snapchat. You cannot screenshot this. And she didn't have another phone around her to, take a picture of it and it not alert him. She's terrified. And obviously she's the one being more viciously abused by him. A lot of the stalking and abuse that happened to me, yeah, there was quite a bit that happened in my face. Most of it happened behind my back. And at this point, I think in his mind, he's so desperate because he thinks he's running out of options. All the students are backing away from me. He's thinking that I'm the reason for this. So that's what happens. And I had to see him. I had not seen him in person since that class in like a few months before. And it was right after I proposed my dissertation. I walked by his office. I know what he had said to my friend, but again, I can't say that. I wanted to say it. I'm ready to be like, can we like, what's up? Like, what's good? What are we doing?
Right.
And I can't do that. And so then it got so horrific to many students. They had an emergency Title IX meeting that was off the books. They did not even put it on the books. His wife is a dean or assistant dean somewhere else. Oh yeah, I know. And so they were worried. And I did not know the extent of the breadth of what was happening. So there were many students in this meeting. The school head, that I'm not a fan of either, had also said, I filed a complaint against him when we got hired together in 2009, and it disappeared in Title IX. And my advisor was in there. She had come from another university, and she said, I got warned before I even came here, and then talked about how she got cornered to kick me out of the program. I obviously talked about what just happened. And so he was immediately suspended. We were assigned our own sergeant, and I had to be escorted on campus, and we had 3 of us had to file emergency protective orders. And in the middle of this, of course, like internship interviews are happening. All these things are happening. I'm getting maybe 3 hours of sleep. I'm running to Title IX. I'm going to all these. I had to go to the police office on campus. We file these complaints, and then immediately I'm retaliated against. Immediately. I'm ready to fight everyone I'm ready to go at this point.
I'm ready to fight everyone right now. And this is already passed.
I'm ready. Yeah. So thankfully the Title IX group that we met was amazing. The past Title IX failed. All of the levels
Clearly.
failed. So they had lost the file. He had complaints filed against him. They were much more subtle, but if they had caught them, now that they had compiled all of it, there's like a clear story of escalation here, because he's a serial predator. This isn't someone that's gonna stop, or it's like a one-off situation, which can happen. It's no, this is gonna keep happening. And it kept escalating. And also my program was self-policing. And so what they would do is, similarly to what I just shared on my Spicy Thursday, is if you had any complaints against a faculty member, whether it's a grade or something, all the way to racism, abuse, whatever, you meet with a professor in a room with the training director. And I thought, okay, so I'm sorry, he threatened to kill me, and you want me to meet in the room with this man with a training director who has every reason to protect him. So, and it was a weird dynamic with the faculty, because it's like the typical, almost like toxic family where they hate each other. They have dirt on each other, and they would use that to capitalize. So for example, if some students would go to him to vent and about another faculty maybe saying something racist or doing something that was like another type of abuse, they'd go to him and vent, or another professor, and they would capitalize on that, on, you can come to me, you can talk to me. And then that's like used later as like another added layer of exploitation. And so now I have this training director who also is very emotionally reactive and probably has some considerable mental health stuff going on. And beyond that is extremely abusive. And although she does not like him, has every reason to protect him. And so it would never escalate. I mean, she had instances of calling her advisees or calling students and just impulsively screaming at them. She had a student live with her for a year before I got there, and that was her advisee. It was incredibly unhealthy. So Title IX finds out, and their legal team is on the phone. And I'm in Title IX, and I asked them about how to file the complaint process. We pull out the handbook, and it's so clearly written in black and white that they've been violating federal law, because there's no difference between, obviously, if there's a grade issue, yeah, of course you go that route. They were funneling everything there. So it becomes this incestuous self-policing thing. So of course it never goes. And then when it did, Title IX lost the files. So they found the files and they compiled all of the things, and their legal team on the phone, I heard them. That's how much they were freaking out, because they realized the gravity of it. And so I'd asked them about other types of abuse or racism or whatever. And they said, you know, they explained the mandatory reporting. No, every time you went from one faculty member to another to vent, or if they witnessed it or whatever, they were all supposed to report that. And it took me about 3 days to process that, because this had been happening for a decade. It was actually worse, a decade, like right when he got hired. It was much more of a boys' club. We have parties where there's lots of alcohol. We host hotel parties at conferences. We make inappropriate comments. Like, it was much more overt. Now it was a lot more subtle, but he had escalated because he was able to, and also probably was increasingly more distressed and unraveling. So it was definitely a cultural piece, multiple levels of failure. He was suspended, and it was wild because, to bring back the true crime piece, I was working at the jail that he was being brought into, and I was supposed to work that morning. And so they knew, and they called me, and I'm an EPO at this point. And they said, don't come in. An added layer is that there was a student from my program that was already in there awaiting trial for rape.
Are you a fan of LGBTQ plus books, plays, movies, TV shows? Well, then I have the magazine for you. It's called The Gay and Lesbian Review. The GNLR is a bi-monthly magazine of history, culture, and politics that publishes essays in a wide range of disciplines, as well as a slew of reviews of books, plays, and movies. Each issue brings you consistently intelligent, lively, thought-provoking articles focused on a unifying theme, and it brings together the leading minds on the topic. So I just had on Dr. Richard Schneider Jr., the founder and editor-in-chief of the GNLR. For the GNLR's 30th anniversary, happy birthday, GNLR, Dr. Richard Schneider talked about their special volume called Outer Appearances, More Faces from the Annals of the GNLR, illustrations by Charles Heffling. They cover current LGBTQ artists such as Harvey Fierstein, Melissa Etheridge, Alan Cumming, James Whiteside, Alison Bechdel, and even David Sedaris, and of course, many others like Stephen Sondheim. There's even a supplemental issue that comes with your commemorative volume. And Andrew Holleran, the writer of Dancer from the Dance, he reviews a book called Morris about E.M. Forster's Morris, written by one of our ITBR guests, David Grevin. So we can't wait for you all to experience this beautiful 30th anniversary GNLR issue. Have you heard some of my GNLR interviews, including Dr. Andrew Lear's discussion about male-male love in ancient Greek society, and Ignacio Darnad opening and blasting the closet door in the queer male art world? Well, Definitely make sure you listen to them after this episode. Head to glreview.org. Make sure you subscribe to their magazine. You'll see there's a section that says subscribe at the top. Enter the promo code ITBR50. That's ITBR50 to receive 50% off. 50% off any print or digital subscription. Enjoy your reading. LGBT stories are universal, but each one speaks to the individual heart and soul of the writer telling it. Do you have a story to tell? Or have you been moved by an LGBT book, film, painting, television show, or other form of media? Then the Gay and Lesbian Review wants to hear from you. The GNLR believes in bringing awareness to queer art and artists through reviews, commentary, and thought pieces in which the author relates their personal lives to a particular piece of art, a novel, a movie. In addition to the print magazine, the GNLR also publishes articles on its blog. So you can see all of this on glreview.org. That's glreview.org. Remember, you get 50% off your subscription of the GL Review magazine when you use the promo code ITBR50. That's 50% off your print or digital subscription when you use promo code ITBR50. To learn more about submitting an article for the GNLR, visit their writer's guidelines. The link is located at the bottom of their homepage. And if you have any questions, email Stephen Hemrick. That's STEPHEN dot HEMRICK at glreview.org. The GNLR and its readers can't wait to see what you have to say. The holiday season may be behind us, but guess what's lurking around the corner? Picture that little baby with a bow and arrow. Yes, Valentine's Day is almost here, and I'm thinking of what gift can I get that my boyfriend will absolutely love and gush over. Well, he is a horror movie fanatic, so I think I have just the thing that he'll die for. Pun intended. My good friend Mandy Bangle is the owner of Mandy Made It, a craft company where she specializes in crochet and pre-cut handmade gifts. So whether your partner is a horror movie fanatic, I'm sure that they have a TV show they love. Maybe there's a book that they love, a music artist, a sports team that they cheer for. Mandy has you covered. From shirts, hats, beanie hats, which I love to wear at the gym, car decals, beer and coffee koozies, keychains, stuffed animals, signs that you want to put all over your apartment. She is ready to create any customized order. So head to Instagram right now, type in at Mandy Made It. That's MANDEE made it. Slide into her DMs, and she is ready to start working on your order. Just send her a few ideas. You could say, hey, my boyfriend really loves horror movies. Or hey, my boyfriend really loves the Broadway musical, Wicked. I'm sure she will figure out some concoction for you. And say that you heard her ad on the Ivory Tower Boiler Room because she's going to give you an exclusive ITBR free gift. She's also working on a new line of ITBR merchandise, so I can't wait to share all of that information with you. Make sure you mention at Ivory Tower Boiler Room when your gift arrives from Mandy so I can share it out on our Instagram. I hope you all enjoy your gifts.
So, yes, I know there are lots of components. That's why it's very difficult to tell us in a succinct way. So then they actually suspended 2 faculty members because of the retaliation. It was wild. It was comments like, oh, he's going to come back. He's just having a mental health issue. Oh, I don't even know if we're allowed to hug anymore because of everything going on.
Oh my God, I hate that.
Oh yeah, it was cornering me in another professor's office, and I called Title IX and I was yelling on the phone, and it was everything. So they got suspended. As anyone who knows, in academia, it is very, very difficult to get someone fired, especially when they're endowed, and he was endowed. And so was one of the faculty members that was suspended. I met with the dean I had all of this evidence and I said, you do realize, that there's a lawsuit here, right? This is pretty obvious. And they've recognized that. So I helped them rewrite the handbook. They went through multiple trainings. I was the go-to person for the stuff in my program, and I would report to Title IX or try to get the students to do it, feel empowered to at least know. You get to decide what you want to do with it, but I want you to know this is extremely illegal. What they're doing is not okay. It's not only not okay, it's literally illegal. And they've had so many trainings about this, and it's the equivalent of us being mandatory reporters for child abuse. It's the same thing. Same thing. There's no. So, but that culture is so difficult to unlearn. So there was a lot of anger, a lot of rage. The court process dragged out for a while, 2 years. He dragged it out. And that frequently happens. And also there were delays because of COVID too. So it took a while. And there were a lot of things legally that were difficult to prove because of the particular state laws there, and also because a lot of it, he was really smart and used things that would have been like Snapchat, for example. So he ended up pleading no contest, fought right till the end to stalking. And like many other states, stalking does not get a long enough sentence considering how high the recidivism rate is. So he pled no contest to stalking. And we also were granted protective orders for 5 years. So that happened. He was going to be fired and then quit right before they made the decision. He resigned. And the rest of the faculty are still there, even the ones that are extremely abusive. And my friends that were literally assaulted by him have said, even though some of those faculty did not assault them, they were worse. So all of it kind of coming together, but I take solace in the fact that, number one, I'm pretty sure they very much regret allowing me into that program. And I was super proud of the students. We had a meeting with the vice president, like the provost, I think, and around that time, who was not responding in a super supportive way. And I was very proud to see all of these students that were originally very scared, not being scared anymore. I also cussed her out in that room. I have it recorded on my phone.
Good.
I was tired of being professional, even though I was constantly called unprofessional. And so there were a lot of things that happened in this program, and a lot of weird true crime things that happen. HR had to get involved. Pretty much every office had to get involved here. And there you go. Those are basically the headlines of it.
And I mean, that's partially why I wanted to start this podcast, because I was like, the age group of individuals who die, like, to me, like, and I'm not trying to grade or say that, any sort of death hurts worse than others. It's just, in my mind, I go, okay, an old person has lived their life. A child doesn't have enough experience to know what they're missing, whereas someone in a college area, there's a lot of hope, there's a lot of promise for the future. And for that to be stripped away, whether it's because of some sort of assault against them or a death, that's an extremely tragic and traumatic thing. And that's why I wanted to focus on that age group specifically, but also because of the crimes that are committed within these institutions that no one wants to talk about. Everyone, I mean, it's, and I hate to even reference this, enjoy your porn how you will, but like everyone sees this stereotype as like a porn situation, the teacher and student dynamic. And a lot of people don't realize that from the get-go, that's an consensual relationship, whether both parties are willing or not. It's just not. And because of the power dynamics at play. And like you said, the retaliation. And I feel like a lot of people don't realize how much retaliation occurs in colleges and in academia at large. And it's just so insane to me because people look at it as if these are two consenting adults, when in reality, they don't understand how the powers that be play into all of this. And like, I know the audience, like, you know, my listeners, they didn't see, I mean, the Patreon people, they'll see it, but like, you'll have seen my reactions to some of these things, even though I've been silent. But
Yeah.
like,
Wild.
it's never okay for these relationships to happen. And I think, like I said, a lot of people think that it's okay because you go, oh, I'm a consenting adult, they're a consenting adult. It's almost like if you're sleeping with your boss. And I feel like, again, people don't really understand that there's a power dynamic at play, but it's more obvious, I think.
Yeah.
And because it involves being paid, you know, that people look at it differently. Whereas in an academia situation, they kind of are like, oh, it's fine, no big deal, you know, whatever. It's something people do. But it's like, no, these are literal crimes that are being committed.
Yeah, it's everything that you said. It's just the sheer rage of, I actually didn't get a chance to really process the trauma while I was in it because I was so angry. And I coped really just by viewing it as, I'm watching this happen to people that I know, which isn't a lie. It was part of it. That's how I got through. And so I was willing to be the distraction, if you will. So pay attention to me. I'm the loudest voice. So you're not paying attention to the students that are scared, but are actually doing a brave amount of work behind the scenes going to. And that's the other piece is I get way too much blame or too much credit, depending on obviously like what side you're on here. Way too much credit from the students even. I'm just the loudest person, but there's no way that I could have done that on my own. And actually, for the record, I was not the person who called Title IX. That was not me. They did not know that I was going through my side of things. It was all of these pockets of people going through the same things, realizing that someone's going to die here. Like he's going to probably kill someone here. And I live close to campus. It was a whole thing. His wife was still working on campus. And there are the added layers too about it being this field. So one, we're very aware of the power differential with clients. All of those faculty acknowledge that and would say, that's absolutely horrific. You can't sleep with your clients because of the power differential, but they will not see it related to the teacher-student dynamic and grad student. On top of that, I get to fly under the radar because there's easier deniability. So even though me, as someone in this field, I know exactly what you're doing, which in some ways makes it worse. And because you've sucked me in because of the ultimate deception here of what you're representing this program to be, which, to be fair, academia is probably performative like that in general, that the piece of that was the main messaging that they led with. And then you're doing this. And that's also how they would bypass it is so you're overriding that. A lot of students talked about overriding that in their mind of, I'm picking up on some red flags here, but number one, I don't know what they are. They're not easily identifiable because they're so subtle. So, and I'm trying to be fair. Our job is to take a step back and always wonder, what mess of mine am I bringing into the picture? On top of that, it's a lot of times, not all the time, but particularly women students who are taught to like override that piece. And then on top of that, they can't possibly be like that. They're a psychologist. They preach this thing. They couldn't possibly be doing the behavior the very thing that they argue against in every research article and every class when they are almost like verbally masturbating to themselves as they're talking because they just love what they're talking about and they love themselves while they're talking about it. All of that. They can't possibly be a psychologist if they do that. And so that truth default theory comes into play of, I'm expecting this gigantic neon sign, and there's that added layer behind that too of like easier deniability. And then I can go back and say, of course I'm not doing that. Did you not hear what I talked about in class yesterday? Did you not see what my literature is on? The gaslighting piece, and I use that word very sparingly, but the gaslighting piece, 100%. And so, yeah, absolutely. Just a lot of that loss. And on top of that, a ton of incompetence. And I feel like pick one or the other, not both. It's unfair to have an abusive program and then also many of the faculty being incredibly incompetent. And so not only is this environment distracting me because of the abuse, I'm also not getting what I need because they don't really know what they're doing. And they love hearing themselves talk. So that's a lot of the classes is this unstructured, them talking about themselves. And so I have to like go out and get the extra training. And the students are teaching themselves. The students are running the programs, as often is the case in academia. So yeah, a lot of layers there. And so yeah, for sure, my handle, the reason I created the podcast 100% is like science communication, breaking things down, trying to hold space for academia as a whole and the discrepancies there. And then also people spreading misinformation, but also 100% part of it was, I knew we we're going to have to tell this story. And there's no better handle than that.
Yeah. I mean, I am so frustrated just like thinking about all of this. Like, I don't know who I need to write to, but like, I'm about to write to everyone because this is like, and again, and I feel like it goes so like swept under the rug is because of the age. Because they go, it's adults amongst adults, they'll figure it out themselves type of a thing.
Groomed.
Yeah. If you're an adult, you can't be groomed. That only happens to children. Well, yeah. And it's like, no, this is still very much a teaching environment. And like you said, it's very sinister particularly in that field, because you know exactly how to subtly like kind of give out these red flags, but also like make it be not so overt. Whereas, you know, anyone who isn't in psychology wouldn't know how to hide that. And it makes me so angry. Like in general, it makes me angry to think that anyone would want to take advantage and abuse someone just because they can. But especially so when it's in a learning environment. Because again, it's like as a student, you're paying tuition to be here, to learn, to, you know, essentially make your career, you know, everything that you need to know for what future career that you want is supposed to be in this institution. And when the institution doesn't give a shit about what's happening to you or is letting these things happen, how are you supposed to, as an individual, cope with that?
Oh, we definitely, I don't think any of us came out unscathed or cope well. I don't, like you said, you can't. Even, it doesn't matter if you're a therapist or a psychologist or whatever, you can't. And it's been amazing seeing everyone leave, and because that would be told to us every time by the cohort above us is they go on internships. That means they're still technically in the program, but they're at a site that's away from, they don't have any classes, they don't really have much interaction. So they finally get that separation. And every time they're like, this is amazing. I get to heal, I get to learn things, and you can't fathom it until you get into it. And so seeing all the people thriving is, I get a soft spot, and I do not normally show like there was no space for me to show that soft spot in that program, but I do feel just that tenderness and affection toward anyone because they're the most resilient people ever. And actually for me, the healing it's still ongoing because I had to acknowledge that it wasn't just happening to people that I know, like I had to experience it and I had to let go of anger, because that means I have to acknowledge the effect that they had on me. And I was not ready to acknowledge that they even impacted me at all. And it's just been amazing seeing people heal. And so it is absolutely infuriating, of course, 100%. And it's amazing that all the students got through this, and there have been these incredible little moments of pushback, like that moment with the vice president. There was also the day in court, the first protective order hearing that you cannot miss or it's thrown out. It's before it's been set. This is just the emergency protective order part. And it was the day that my partner had been gone for a year to Turkey, and it was the day he was supposed to come back, and I could not go get him from the airport, and I had not seen him in 13 months, and I had to be at this court date because of this guy. And I remember we had an advocate sitting on the outside of our little bench thing in the courtroom, and I turned around, and I'm sitting on the outermost side that I could, because I'm going to protect them and the other students. And I remember turning around, and I don't remember what face I gave, but I know that I channeled every atom of rage in my face when I turned around, because all of it, and because my internship letter suffered. I didn't get a lot of sites because this was more important. This had to take precedence. And now I'm having to miss picking up my partner that I hadn't seen in 13 months because I have to be here at this damn hearing for this guy. So I turn around, and I don't know what face I gave, but I know it was a big one, because he literally got up and walked out and would not come back in until it was his time to go. And that was like a very satisfying moment for me. So there are definitely these moments, and the students are absolutely thriving. And I would accept everything, even with the faculty still being there, if the program, like if they truly grew. I know that they haven't, but they have got more variety and new professors. So that piece at least breaks up the old culture that was in place. So it's still a work in progress, but overall, very proud of the students and just what they've overcome. Just I can't complain. I didn't have to experience what a lot of them did.
I mean, and even though you didn't experience a lot of what they did, I feel like you should also be very proud of yourself for being the loudmouth that helped. I mean, if I was one of these students and I saw that someone was being a loudmouth, that would give me the courage. I mean, I'm not going to speak for those people, but I feel like to some level, knowing that there was someone who was going to say something probably gave them hope and gave them enough courage to say something. And I know, obviously, I also commend these people. I'm not trying to make light. You know, they are absolutely incredible, but I also don't want you to discount your role in this, because I feel like you really did help in some ways. You probably helped more than you realize, because sometimes you just need a loudmouth to know that, like, okay, all right, if this person's saying that this isn't okay, then I can feel comfortable to come out with my story and what happened to me. So I think you should give yourself a little bit more credit for that. More than you're giving right now. So
I mean, everyone played the role. And I think that's another piece too, is anytime you're facing this huge systemic block there, because again, he was just the scapegoat. The dean, who was my dissertation chair, I thankfully didn't have to interact with a lot. He stepped down as the dean because he was part of it. And he also used to engage in a lot of really gross behavior. So, and he's still there. And so everyone played their role. You need multiple people. You need the behind the scenes people. You need the people that are willing to give people the benefit of the doubt. I will tag team with a lot of creators, for example, on Instagram, combating misinformation. There are a lot of people that are going to give the benefit of the doubt and say, you know, good faith interpretations of, okay, maybe we're misinformed and And if you don't want to see me, because that means that we've gotten to a point where we have no other options, and I'm going to be loud about it, and we're going to do whatever we need to do. And so I think that that's a big piece, is 100%. Yes, I was very loud. I was not a favorite among the faculty whatsoever. I know they immediately regretted admitting me into that program. And yes, they did get some confidence in speaking out. And yes, there were a lot of students that in their own way, they participated because I had burned bridges with the faculty. So I didn't know always what they were saying about me or what they were doing to other students. I was like the go-to person who like kind of collected all of the things and put it together. So the faculty would talk about other students to other students again, like really inappropriate boundaries. And so then we would kind of compile all of this information, and it gave us an idea of where their emotional stability was, depending on what they were saying. And so kind of getting that intel, I guess, for lack of a better word, or insight, helped us kind of navigate, what do we do next? How do we approach a situation? So it was absolutely a team effort for everyone out there that's navigating really difficult cultures, and there are multiple levels at play, and it seems like a hurdle to overcome. You need all different kinds of people and tackling it from all angles kind of at the same time. And I sound like this was very strategic and we knew exactly what we were doing. We kind of figured it out along the way, but reflecting on it, I'm thinking, yeah, okay, we did. We tag teamed. Everyone's different strengths kind of came together and we did the thing. And we tried to kind of mimic that in other settings too. So yes, it is absolutely a wild story. And he was the scapegoat. He was the one that, and that's what immediately happened when he got arrested, was they freaked out. Homeostasis is now disrupted, even though it's very unhealthy in general. And they're immediately going to try to distance themselves from him. And so he's the problem. He was like a lone wolf, like, that's happening. And absolutely.
Yeah. It's never just one lone wolf, especially in institutions like academia. There's always, it may be one person who's doing the quote unquote crimes, but the other people who are not even bystanders, but just letting it happen. People in positions of power who let these things get swept under the rug because reputation or image or whatever, what have you, was more important than calling out this person or calling out that injustice. And again, I feel like that is something, obviously it's not exclusive to academia, but I feel like it happens more often in academia. And again, I think a lot of it has to do with the power imbalance and students feeling like, well, if this is what I need to do to graduate and get through, then I'm going to do it. But that's not a fair position to put students in. That's not a fair position to put anyone in, regardless of what it's for. If you wouldn't do it for a job, you should definitely not do it for college, no matter how high of a level you put it in your head. Like it's not acceptable.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point that it's not excusable from other faculty. So that was some things that we heard too, especially by one of his friends who also ran the master's program and was also very abusive, just not in the same way. Doesn't detract from the severity of the abuse. And in a more exploitative way with regard to labor, with regard to, I will not respond to your messages when you need me to for academic reasons, for deadlines, unless you answer every single text within 5 minutes immediately. I demand this to be all about me. And so when he got arrested, obviously that destabilized things. And so people that were already not super stable were way more unstable. And so I remember hearing that she had made it all about her, that she was so betrayed, that she was groomed by him. And I even heard graduates from our program who did not experience what we did kind of saying, well, they didn't know the extent to what it was. He bamboozled them, And I'm thinking, to some extent, maybe that's true. There's still no excuse. There's still not, he was doing things right in front of her face. He was texting my friend constantly right in front of her face. She knew that, but she thought that was normal because she's also texting students constantly. It's just not for sexual reasons, sexually predatory reasons. And so that happening, and just kind of making the excuse. And also they had dirt on each other. That was the other thing, is if they would go against each other, there are some consequences. So even though they didn't, maybe one person wasn't a dean over another person, they had the ability to, for example, one person had the ability to assign classes. So if you went against the person who's assigning classes, they could assign you the worst ones, or that advisor who assigned advisees to people could just choose not to give you any advisees or too many advisees, like those kinds of things. And while I can understand that that makes your life uncomfortable, not comparable, not comparable at all. There's no excuse. And you actively made a choice, right? You actively made a choice you didn't go to the media. You did not try everything that you possibly could do. So then that meant we had to try everything that we possibly could do and risk quite literally our lives to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, again, it's like, I feel like these colleges and universities, they preach like, oh yeah, we're going to protect you. It's no big deal. But they're really just after protecting their own, because let's face it, students come and go. Their teachers, their faculty, that's what's making them their money. It's not the students that are paying. It's the faculty that's being kept on as instructors to, quote unquote, mold these young minds and help them into their careers. Yeah. And it's just like, but it's also like, you can't allow, in theory, in a perfect world, you can't allow for someone so toxic and so abusive to be put in charge of molding and helping further the careers of other people. But yet they're like, oh yeah, we're just, it's almost like, to me anyway, from some of the cases that I've studied, it almost feels like the higher ups in academia like to be so removed from the faculty. Like that they like to be like, oh, well, it's just them, and act as if they had no role and that their knowledge of what was happening had no effect over the outcomes of some of these students' livelihoods.
100%. It's just like the thing that I shared yesterday at Washington University Med, and Kipnis, who wasn't the person that actually abused the student, but was the person that was like, I'll take care of it, and didn't actually report it and didn't do anything. I mean, yes, got rid of the student. The student got to resign though. He didn't give them a recommendation letter, but we don't know where that student is. And, so yeah, for sure, those layers. And I think it's because, anytime you're in some group, if someone does something and deep down you're worried that there might be similarities there. So like you said, you're going to create as much emotional distance as you can, because the possibility that there's any similarity between yourself and that person now that they've been caught or what things are coming to light is too much to bear. So I'm going to avoid it however I can avoid that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, first of all, I just want to thank you for sharing your story. Dr. Mack, thank you so much for being here. This was so much fun. I feel like I have like 50 other questions that I could totally ask you, but like we're not going to have time for that. So, I definitely want to have you back. You are such a wealth of knowledge and just a pleasure to talk to. I completely enjoyed this conversation. Can you let my listeners know where they can find you?
Yes. No, I had so much fun. Also can refer some actual forensic psychologists your way, and they would be happy to nerd out on some of this for sure. And my handle on pretty much all my social media stuff is Revealing the Ivory Tower podcast, or Revealing the Ivory Tower. Definitely on Instagram, it's Revealing the Ivory Tower pod. So check me out. Obviously similar names here, similar goals. And yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Again, this was so great. I'm loving this. Thank you.
I hope you all enjoyed this refeature of my interview with Revealing the Ivory Tower and Dr. Mack. I'm excited to announce that there will be a future episode. Dr. Rimby and I are going to be joined with Dr. Mack and a few other special guests for this upcoming project that we have going on. I don't want to spoil it, so that is all I'm going to say. But like I said, I hope you all enjoyed it. I can't believe it's been over a year since we've recorded this episode and that so much time has passed. But I'm looking forward to, like I said, this new episode / project that we have coming up. And I hope you guys like it too. Don't forget to follow True Crime in Academia on social media, on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads. We're at True Crime in Academia. And on X / Twitter, it's at TC in Academia. If you are a patron, you already have access to this episode. You also have access to the bonus footage from this episode, as well as the video version. So if you're a patron, go ahead, enjoy. And for those of you who aren't patrons, you can go to patreon.com/Ivory Tower Boiler Room and subscribe today. And like I said, you'll have access to the video and extended episode, as well as an ad-free episode. So if you're interested in all that for the price of a cup of coffee, go to patreon.com/Ivory Tower Boiler Room. All right, my loves, I'm going to kick back and relax. Kickoff was absolutely insane and I'm exhausted. So, until next time, my loves, please stay safe, and I will see you all later.